This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Baruch haba, welcome everyone. We continue in the Orchos Chaim of the Rosh. We're up to Ois Mem Daled. Kiva itim l'Torah, one should set times for learning. Koydem achila, before one eats. Ushchiva, and before one sleeps. Now what's the Indian of setting time to learn before one eats? So, Rav Goldberg quotes the Rav Chaim Kanievsky's Perush on the Orchos Chaim, based on the Gemara Brachos. The Gemara says at the last page that anyone who leaves the shul and goes straight to the Beis HaMedrash, he'll be Zoiche V'roya Pnei Hashchina Shenemar Yelchu Mechayel El Choyel Yeroa El Elokim B'Tzion. The Gra likewise commands his household that they should learn the Igeres before the Suda and during the Suda. But there's a special Indian to learn before one eats. So the way Rav Chaim Kanievsky is learning it, before you eat, you should make sure to learn. In other words, straight from davening, you should have a Seder. This is based on the idea that you should go from Tefillah to Torah. And the Magen Avram says that if we know that a person is supposed to be kovei itim l'Torah, l'chadchila, the best time to be kovei itim is right after Shachris. Right after Shachris. Before Shachris, it's a question whether you're allowed to learn before Shachris. If you have a reminder to daven Shachris, then it's permitted. But the primary time is to learn right after Shachris. And the Magen Avram even says, if you don't have time to learn then, at least l'chol hapachos pasuk echad or halacha achas. But to say that what the Rosh means of learning koydem achila, he means learn before you eat, don't eat before you learn. It almost seems like there's a special Indian of learning before the eating. Not just going from tefillah to learning, but learning before the eating. We once saw from the Reish Chachma that from the Shla Kadosh that this man achila is a time to do tshuva. One should do tshuva before achila. So perhaps then there's a special Indian of learning before achila. Ushchiva, before going to sleep. Reb Chaim Kanievsky quotes the Gemara Brachos Daf Yudalid. Anyone who satiates themselves with words of Torah and then goes to sleep will not hear bad tidings, will not have besuros ra'os. Now we know that in Pirkei Avos, one of the Kinyanei HaTorah is Miyot Shena. The Medrash Shmuel says as follows: don't love to go to sleep. In other words, don't go to sleep. One should learn, and when a person feels that sleep is sort of overtaking them, then you could hit the sack. In other words, don't go to sleep, but one should learn, and when the person feels tired from the learning, that's the time to go to sleep. And then Rav Goldberg quotes the Sefer Mishal Avos, quoting Reb Leizer Gordon, the Avbezin of Telz. Reb Yaakov, we had the schus to be at Reb Gordon's kever in London, and he says on the pasuk, Vayapel Hashem Elokim Tardema al Ha'adam, and God cast a slumber on a person. That from here we see sleep is a yerida. People think, the best part of the day is sleep. It is. The truth is, sleep is very important. It's very important to get enough sleep. The greatest refuah for the body is sleep. However, nevertheless, it's a yerida because you can't accomplish anything when you're asleep. Basically, a person is putting themselves to death. Baruch Hashem, most of the time we wake up. But it's a tardema. Okay, so one should try to learn before they eat, before they sleep. V'dibarta bam al shulchancha. You should speak in them on the table. So now the Rosh is speaking about the importance of divrei Torah at the table. Interestingly, he learns it from the pasuk v'dibarta bam. So if Goldberg brings the Sefer Be'er Yitzchak, that the Torah says v'dibarta bam, it should have says ulamarata bam, you should learn it. V'dibarta implies that your main conversation outside of Seder, we're not talking about, of course, you have your shir, you have your Seder, now we're talking about regular conversation. Your the primary subject of your regular conversation should be Divrei Torah. That's what we learn out from V'dibarta bam. Your Iker Dibur should be Divrei Torah. Therefore, the Rosh, in the context of saying Divrei Torah at the table, he derives it from V'dibarta bam. Now, V'hizarta bam anshe beizcha. You should warn the people of your household. Lahadricham, to guide them, al pi Torah, based on the Torah. B'chol hadvarim hatzrichim asar, whatever needs to be warned. So it's interesting. After he talks about the importance of setting time for Torah, he talks about instructing your household in the pathways of Torah. Lishmar pihem milehis chalel, to guard their mouths from being defiled. Now, the unqualified language of the Rosh implies that a person has to warn their household members not to defile their words, even in regular conversation, even if it's not usher. In other words, let's say there's a conversation raging about the price of tuna fish. Where do they have better prices for tuna fish? In Glatmart, in Gourmet Glat, or in Seasons? And this conversation is raging on. No, one should instruct their family that this is a inappropriate form of conversation. You don't talk about tuna fish. Tuna fish is not a topic of conversation. Why? The Rosh says it's you're defiling the koyach hadibur. You're not speaking lashon hara. You're not speaking sheker. You're not saying anything wrong. It's just an improper use of speech, as Rav Goldberg quotes the Gra, who tells his household members that the whole kaf hakela, it's all for just excessive and unnecessary speech. Each word is one has to give an accounting for. Now, the Tosfos Yom Tif, in his translation of the Orchos Chaim, he seemed to have the girsa not to guard their mouth from it being defiled, but to guard their mouth from melehis halel, from being arrogant. And Rav Goldberg explains that specifically someone who is careful in Limud HaTorah, is more prone for gaiva, and therefore the Rosh in this context warns Lishmar Pia Milhes Halel. And then the Rosh says something very interesting. Ki Techilas Dinoi Shal Adam Kavati Itim Latar. The first thing a person is judged on is whether he set times for learning. As Gemara says, Kedushin Mem Amud Beis, Ein Tchilas Dinoi Shal Adam Ela Al Divrei Torah. So, Rabbi Cheskel Sarna wants to know, why did the Rosh include the accountability for Bittul Torah at the end of this piece? It should have been earlier, after he said, Bi Koivea Itim LaTorah, before eating, before sleeping, before at the table. So the Rosh should say it because that's what a person is, the first indictment on a person is for Bittul Torah. No, first he says, and warn your family in all the pathways of the Torah, and because the first thing a person is judged on is kavat itim l'Torah. Why? It should have been mentioned earlier in the piece, but apparently Rav Goldberg says kavata itim l'Torah means a person needs to set many times for learning in his house, so that his family sees the chashivas you have for Torah. It's not enough. Very nice. You learn 4 hours Shabbos morning, it's very good. But everyone in the house is sleeping, so they don't know what you're learning. And you learn 2 hours every night, good. They don't know where you are. You need to learn before the meal and before you go to sleep, so that when your kids see you, they see you are koiveh itim many times for learning. That's how they pick up the chashivas for learning. The Kli Yakar says on the pasuk, mi bayis umi chutz titzapenu, that it's very nice you learn mi bachutz, but you have to also learn mi bayis. You have to make sure you have sidarim in the house as well. And therefore, the tachlis of kavat itim l'Torah is to guide your family. So that's why after the Rosh speaks about the importance of guiding your family, the Rosh ends off, Tchilas dinoi shel adam kavata itim la Torah. Okay, Marv Rabbi say, we will hold it over here. We will, B'ez Hashem, next week there will not be Orchos Chaim Rosh. We'll pick it up the week after. Tonight we have an amazing subject on the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. Everyone's invited at 8:30, and wishing everyone bracha v'atzlacha. You could join us Friday morning for the regular shiurim. Have a wonderful night. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.